Welcome back to Starfish and Coffee, where my aim is to talk about all things pop culture related, though as I pointed out last week, we seem to have latched onto music as being the holy grail at the moment. My name is Sean Smith and I've been writing about pop culture for around 30 years now, so you may know me from some great indie magazines like Rock and Roll Babylon, Burn, Zero, but most likely as being the editor of Skin Deep Tattoo magazine since sometime in 2009. I've also written more than a few books, and right now I'm just feeling my way in the dark to find out what happens when printed media pretty much dies in your arms but you still have something left to say. This week we hit episode 5, which is part 2 of It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll, although obviously that doesn't preclude any other genre of music. But nobody in country or hip-hop came up with a song title I could steal that fit the bill quite so well, so there's probably a lesson in there somewhere. Once again, I'm joined by my disc-spinning, club-running buddy JJ, so let's roll that tape and see what gives. Hello again, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Last week's show was in-depth, to say the least. I'm confused more than I was before, and I'm glad I'm not 17 and listening to us trying to figure it out. That's all I can say.
Yeah. You often see these things, don't you, with like mentors, these people who've been around, and you go and sit with them and they'll lead you down the path to glory. We'll lead you down the path and we don't know where we're going.
That brings up something. About 2 months ago, I joined some song publishing webinar. It was a freebie thing. I thought I'll just stick my face in, see what it's like, and it was hosted by some guy who looked like he could care less whether he did it or not. And the guy he was interviewing, who was a president at a major label, looked like he wanted to be there even less. And for an hour, they just talked about nothing of any value at all, while the record company due date is lunch on the webcast. And it was kind of like, I know things are easy and cool and we're all laid back and everything now, but there's got to be a line, right? There's got to be a line at which you want to be taken seriously and can help. Yeah, or you'd think so.
I'm amazed at the amount of things I used to go to that were similar to that, and I'd attend in person. And yeah, you're right. That is the quote. The quote is lots of people who seem like they'd rather be somewhere else, and you'd sit there thinking, then why are you here? Are you just here because we know why they're there, because somebody said we'll give you a couple of £100 to come here and we'll put you in an hotel room, and it's a jolly. And that's transferred a little bit to sometimes some of the things I've seen in Zoom conferences as well. Some of these similar people, some of them the same people, I have to say, but some of them are very similar, where they do just sit there, like you said, like they don't really have an interest and they don't really care. And I'm like, but that's no good, because I would have thought that when you are still in the early doors, period of wanting to do this, when you're hungry, you would expect to be surrounded by people that were still excited later on that they'd achieved what they wanted to become or be part of when they were younger. I mean, I've just, funny enough, we're on this chat now, and this will date it in many respects, because I've just seen Alice Cooper on the One Show.
Excellent.
And yeah, but Alice, he's in his 70s and he's still enthusiastic, and he's talking about his new record like it's his first record. He's talking about the tour and guillotines, and he's talking about wanting to rock and roll just like he did when Schools Out first hit in, probably, in the early 70s, 50 years ago. And that's that's what I expect.
Funny you should say that, because I listened to someone said that Alice had been on Clive Anderson on on Radio 4 on Sunday evening, perhaps, and I thought, Jesus, I'll go and dig it out. And again, he was as pro as anything, excited about his new album. And it's probably, by the time we got to what is it today? Wednesday. By the time we got to Wednesday, he's probably done 300 interviews across Europe all day long. And every single one, he turns up like he wants to be there. And that translates to something that I used to hold dear with my magazines, which is, it may be your 300th issue, but for someone else, that's their first issue.
Yes.
And that's where you've got to come in at. Everyone is, that might be the first time someone had seen Alice or, heard his music or first magazine. And that's the kind of level you have to keep up, not this chewing on some cheese and an apple in your leather chair, checking your texts and wishing you were anywhere else but there. That's not the way it should work. I wouldn't want to sign with that guy.
And how exciting does that make the industry that you're about to enter seem? You see interviews with Quentin Tarantino and you think, wow, I want to be a filmmaker, because he's excited and he's off the wall, and it's kind of chaotic in many respects. It's got organized chaos in some respects, and you see certain writers and but certainly music, I would have thought was primarily an area that you're coming into and you think, man, this has got to be great to work in music, to go on tour, to be in the studio, to do all of those things. And when you're, I guess, maybe, you're 16 to early 20s, like say in that period, that's the period when you are most excitable about entering in. And if you're right. If you do see somebody sitting there with their Apple and checking their watch and looking at their text, that just sucks the big one, because I'm still excited. I mean, I know it's hard sometimes. Yeah, you are repeating yourself, and some days it is a bit like, do I really need to do this again? But then something fires in somewhere. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there was only yesterday. I'm just looking for it now. On the front page of Apple Music, there was Zane Lowe interviewing Rob Zombie about how he was still able to bring to the table now what he brought to the table then. And again, that's because Rob's still excited about what he does. He likes his creation. He's like, I've built this thing and I think it's great, and so do 30,000 people every night when we can get out, and I'm looking forward to the new album coming out. And he's excited, and it makes you want to be part of it, even if the album sucks, And that's important.
Maybe it's because people, I mean, I guess if you analyze it and you do get analytic about it, which you're going to if we're discussing this here in a cast situation, you're going to look at it and they're going to see the fact that, Rob Zombie's going to look at it and go, okay, I may be over 50 now and I might have been doing this a while. But then he looks at Alice and says, well, Alice ain't stopping. And Alice,
I got 25 years still to go.
And he's got to be sitting there thinking, okay, I'm Rob Zombie. And he also knows that the rest of us are sitting out here going, man, you're cool. And White Zombie were fantastic. And Rob, you've done some great albums and we love you. And, you've got some fantastic work out there, but you're not Alice Cooper. and I guess that's what drives him on, is the fact that he's still got something to aim towards. And that's what it should be, shouldn't it? So that young kid who's forming a band tomorrow that wants to be the new White Zombie has got to be looking at, Marilyn Manson, and then looking at Zombie, and then looking at Alice Cooper and thinking, I've got a way to go here, and I still want to be at 30, at 50, at 70. I want to be that guy who's still doing it. So
do you think that's... Do you think that's me and you?
Go on.
Do you think that's me and you and the things we like? I mean, I know you and I don't rate Thunder, but as a British rock band, they're pretty good.
They're very good.
Blah blah blah, but they're nothing special.
No.
And to aim for that is pretty simple.
But then on the
And
flip side, they've got the thing they have now is they've been having, they've been making records and having albums, chart and sell and going on tour, since 1990. So they've now, they've got a 30-year game, which isn't bad, at any stretch of the account. So I now look at them and think, okay, no, I don't particularly want to be in them. I might not particularly want to listen to them. They're not really my thing. But I tell you what, I admire the longevity, and I admire the fact that they stuck at it, and they can still go and sell 2,000 tickets and play.
Sure, but what
out.
But what I mean there is that the bar is low compared to what you and I consider excellent, if you like.
But then the bar got lower, didn't it? I mean, if you talk to a lot of the the younger bands, whether that's Massive Wagons or whoever it happens to be, the upcoming new breed of rock and roll that was the new breed 10 years ago. If you talk to them, their bar is really, really struggling to get off the ground right now because what are they doing? They're getting 0.0.0.5p from a Spotify play, and they might be able to play to 200 people in a space somewhere. And so I guess if they could be on top of the pops, and they could sell 100,000 records, and they could play at Donington in front of 80,000 people, they'd kill for that. They'd kill to do what Thunder or the Almighty or Little Angels or or the Fireboys or Dogs or anybody that was around then did. So that bar for them is way, way up there, because the bar right now is way, way low, because you're not looking at the Ozfest. You're not looking at the California Jam and 250,000 people and doing 1 million sales. You're not looking at Def Leppard, who sold 1 million records in a week of when Hysteria came out. So I think the field, mate, is completely a different space to be in right now. Honestly.
So here's kind of what I think, and I'd like to know what you think. But if I was, this is a weird one. Okay, if I was 20 and know what I know now, I think my way forward would be to come offline. I would be very inclined to become something that wasn't available offline. Tapes would be good.
Yeah.
What I'm kind of getting at is there's a punk ethic here that I think bands need to embrace in this. I mean, digital's great, but everyone can do it. I think you've got to think out of the box. Go and buy a tape recorder.
And there's no money. There's no money.
No.
Tape
your rehearsals, sell them as live tapes or whatever, little hand-drawn cover, and you would be a very big fish in your pond, and you could grow that regionally. You could grow it in your hometown, to the next town, to the next town, to the next city, and I really think that's a way forward for somebody, because I know a band that formed just before Christmas. They're very good. They're all excellent musicians. They wanted to record an EP. They did. They wrote 4 songs. They wrote 4 more. They cut them down. They got a 4-track EP. They put it on Spotify and went, our new EP's on Spotify. And that was it.
Yeah.
Whoever's going to look went to look.
Yeah.
And you can't say the same again tomorrow, because everyone goes, oh, I heard that yesterday. Boring. Now that's spam.
Yeah.
And I saw exactly the same thing with a friend of mine who just wrote a book yesterday. she wrote, "My book is now out on Amazon. Please go and buy it." Blah blah. And that was it. That's your shot. And today you're forgotten about.
And
Unless you're going to be prolific and write a song every 2 days and just keep throwing them at the wall, you've got to do something different, in my opinion.
well, the struggle for me, I've got a double-edged sword thought with that. On the product side of things, my problem is that if you are a writer, or if you're in any kind of world like that, and you put out a post today and says, "Here's my book cover. I've got a book out." Great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's fabulous. But the bottom line is the next post you share is, "Here's my cover. I've got a book out." And you do that 5 times, 10 times, and you just there's no next. It's not that kind of side of things as there isn't a next. At least with an album, you can kind of go, "Here's my album, it's out," and then a month later go, "Here's my single," and then a month later go, "Here's my next single," and a month later go, "Here's a live little kind of 20-minute gig I did for you to listen to."
Yeah.
So your content is at least there's an evolution in the content. But unfortunately, in a lot of mediums in digital, well, they just isn't, unless, I mean, you're a class example of this. Before I jump into the other side of it, you're a class example of this. How many? I mean, what are you supposed to do? If we take Black Dye, White Noise, as an example of a self-published book that you did, are you going to do 10 or 20 different covers mixed with another 30 different pictures of Dee Snider and Coheed and Cambria and whatever, and then you're going to have to share every time something that makes me see something I haven't seen before?
Well,
and that,
I mean,
and you're going to treat it as treat each chapter as a single, and then promote it over the period of a month as like, right, here's the bit with Dee Snider, here's the bit with Coheed and Cambria, here's the bit. Do you understand what I mean? And are you?
I do.
To do that, you could, but
well, what I actually did with the book that came after it was I took 12 copies and I kept them on me, and I sent one to a friend in LA.
Yeah.
I gave one to a photographer I was working with, who gave it to his dad.
Yeah.
And the photos came back of it being read in a restaurant in LA, of it being on the beach in Greece, of it being in the back of a van in the Lake District. And although it was only the cover or it being read, it was an opportunity to say something different. Oh, here's my new book being read in X.
Yes.
And I could have kept going, but I didn't, because I was busy. But that's the sort of thinking you've got to get into. What can I say next?
That's exactly what it is. So, like I say, so your next book, 12 chapters, you've got to treat each chapter and look at it as 12 album tracks. And then you've got to think, which one of these chapters do I want to put out as a single? And now I've got to come up with some imagery from each one of them, because I'm not going to just give a piece of it, which I'm not even going to get into the fact that when I see people publishing parts of their book, I can't go, what are you doing? Because I've now read it. What is wrong with you? I don't get that.
Yeah.
But unless you can do it that way, and then every, however it's a campaign, however long you decide to do it, is keep pushing it. But like you say, pushing it a different way. You've got to re-engage. God, that's it's not like, is it just putting it in Waterstones and it sells?
No.
It's, those days are gone. Those days are long gone.
But I mean, boot on the other foot then. How would you go about being a 20-year-old singer-songwriter or a guy in a band?
Well, to flip it on that side, I obviously, the pair of us, like listening to specific podcasts and people that we both admire and want to listen to. And one of the people I do listen to a lot is a guy called Henry Rollins. And Henry was obviously in the early days was in a band called Black Flag, and Henry tells great stories of riding into town with exactly what you said. They'd had an album, and instead of they got a bunch of C90 cassettes, and they got the album, and they just recorded the album onto some C90 cassettes,
Yep.
and photocopied the cover and put it in, and that's what they had on sale at the shows. And because Henry's a writer and he likes poetry, he did some of his own poetry, and they had a bit of a fanzine on sale with some of his poetry in. And when you went to the shows, that was their thing. Their thing was, we're here, this is the live show. You're going to get an hour of this intense punk rock and roll show. And if you want to listen to anything afterwards, buy a tape, buy a zine, take it home, read some of my poetry, read some of my lyrics, listen to the album, and check us out, town by town by town. And I think there's a lot of, when I've watched a lot of his later things, when he's been doing, his spoken word tour and talking to people, there's a lot of the audience that attended that were 16, 18, 20, who kind of sat there and went, that's what I'm going to do. That is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to book a gig, and I'm going to go and play, and I'm just going to say to somebody that there you go, there's my stuff. Buy it if you want. Don't buy it if you don't want, and that's the way it is. But don't go online, because I have a website, but you can't buy jack shit from it, and I'm not in HMV, and this is it. And that's it is obviously. We have to call it a punk rock DIY epic because that's where it was born. We know before, Rough Trade in 1976 which was a punk rock shop and had all the great punk rock singles. That's what it is. But I guess it's your entry point of what you're looking at, and getting back to your original entry point in the beginning of this cast. I think the most important thing for these people who are going to singer-songwriter seminars or going to boutique festival things is they need to have a Henry. They need to engage with someone who's doing it out of the system, and someone who says to them, do it out of the system. And the great thing about, I know writers who are doing it, and Henry's a great music version of this. There are people who are doing it out of the system who are successful in their own right. They're doing okay. They're not doing great. They might not have a mansion, might not have a Ferrari, but they're doing all right.
Now, you dropped a name to me a few months back, and I'd never heard of him. And as I talked about him, no one I ever mentioned him to had ever heard of him either.
Right.
And that is Gerry Cinnamon.
Right.
Who, when I looked him up, I'm like, how are you headlining a festival and I've never heard of you? How have you sold this much stuff? How? And that is because out of the system.
Yes.
He just came out of this. Well, he wasn't even in the system to start with, right? No. He just made his own path, and if you knew about it, you knew about it. But how he got so big without so many people noticing?
And he still isn't. The great thing about Gerry is he was due to play the Echo Arena in Liverpool, which is 11,000 people. It's a big arena. It's and it's sold out, and it was fantastic. But Gerry ain't interested in embracing the mainstream. Gerry is very like, you didn't give a shit about me when you didn't know who I was, so don't bother turning up now because I'm not really bothered. If you wanna cover me now, I'm not interested, mate. And he hasn't changed that stance. Frank Turner's another simple version of that, and their attitude can sometimes be seen as, whatever, arrogance or whatever. I don't think. I just think that they struggled long enough to kind of go, why? No, go away. You know what I mean? And they just,
well, you would, wouldn't you? Yeah. I mean, if you built an audience and you built your thing to a point where you were, selling enough on Bandcamp for a record company to pay attention.
Absolutely.
And then they come with the money. You're surely at a point where you can go, well, I don't actually need you anymore. Where were you when I needed you?
But position yourself in the first place that you don't. I mean, we're now sitting here, we're now chatting, and we're on a podcast, Starfish and Coffee. Right? It's great. We're doing a podcast. We want people to listen. It'd be great if 1,000 people listened. It'd be great if 100,000. It'd be great if it was 1 million. But you're going to send out invites for people to kind of like come and have a chat with me on my podcast. And the first thing they want to know is how many listeners you got. Well, immediately they ask you that, you think, well, balls to you, because I don't want to talk to you. I just want to have a chat. And then if they do say, well, we might talk to you in a year when you're a bit bigger, or we might talk to you, you're going to get bigger and you're going to get more. And by the time you do get to a substantial size, whatever you judge as a substantial size, Joe Rogan is obviously at the top of the mountain, and it's everybody down from that. But if they then come back to you in a year's time and go, oh, we've checked you out and you've now got a lot of followers on Spotify and a lot of listeners, we want to come and chat to you now. Well, second word is off. First word is their choice, because it's no way. You've got to stand in that corner from the beginning and say that, and say, do you know what? I'm only going to engage with people who give a shit now, and if they give a shit later, I'm not interested. You've got to stand in that corner.
And let's face it, any podcast that comes along in 3 years with you and me on it is, we might have mastered the tech a bit more, but it's going to sound like this. It's not going to be any different. I don't see how 1 million listeners could change what we ever talked about and the way we see things. Otherwise, I think you'd just show up as a fraud. You would. People know when you're playing the game, don't they?
But again, there's some of the stuff I'm doing, with the Dark Hollow thing, and I send out invites and I send out emails to people, and I go, look, I'm doing this is what I'm up to. If you fancy getting on board, or fancy having a chat, or fancy doing something, and they don't. And I just think, okay, fair enough. But I also know that when they do pop back, I will say, go, no chance. The second word will be off, because that's how it's been. When I ran a nightclub, it was like that. When people, I'd say to them, oh, give me this or give me that for the nightclub, or let's do this. And they said no. And then suddenly we got to a size where we're doing 3,000 people every weekend. And then suddenly the phone would go and go, oh, can we do this? I'd go, no. And they go, oh, but it's this, it's X band and X brand. And I'd go, I don't care who it is, mate. No, you're not on. You didn't give a rat's when I was only doing 300 people. And now you do. And you should have cared when I was only doing 300 people. And I really stuck to it. And I think that's, if you're going to sit outside the modern digital age, you really have got to decide to sit outside when the people come in, and not be fearful and think, oh my God, it's Spotify. You kind of got to go, I'm not bothered, mate. Do you know?
Yeah. But which kind of comes around to the point of the whole thing is, if you're going to be in a band and you're trying to get somewhere, you have to take your stance against the world, whatever that. Even if you're the complete opposite of what we've been talking about, even if you're all in with Spotify, that's fine. But you've got to take your stance, and you've got to ride that horse into the ground for whatever it's worth. I don't think you can. There seems to be a lot of playing all the games. I mean, and they're all there to play. You can go here, there. You can be on everything, and all you do is water yourself down across all of them.
And only be on the ones that work for you. But, again, the one thing, coming from our last conversation when we talked about it, was that still that same ethos of keep your eye and keep looking, because the world, the tech world specifically, is changing so fast. Even in the in-between bit that we've done the last part of this chat and this part, SoundCloud, and I've come out and said that they're really turning into a streaming company, and the rates they're going to pay are going to be better than any rate that's currently out there on any other platform. Now, you've got to be watching and be close enough to be watching to kind of go, whoa, hold on here a minute. I need to have a look at that, and I need to be on it, because that's 3 times the amount for one stream than I'll get on any other streaming platform. And so you've got to be aware. And if you're not chasing right now, you will definitely be lost in the fog, because it's, me and you today. I mean, even today, I've, obviously for those who don't know, with you being involved in publishing and design and everything, even the fact that, I did a bit of a press release today and turned it into a PDF. It didn't look great. Mm-hmm. And I sent it to you, and you went, here's this thing, and it's called Adobe Spark. And I went, oh, what's that? And you just went, it does this, and sent it back, and it blew everything out the water. And if you don't know about it, then
it's a great little bit of kit,
but I guess the point I'm making is, if there's somebody who is sitting there living in that world and they don't know about it, then they're not keeping up with something that could actually put them ahead of the game.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just to sort of expand that a little bit, Adobe Spark is a tiny little app that you can keep on your phone or your machine, and you can make web page quality, print quality, press releases. They can go on forever. You can put a chapter of a book out. You can drop in video links, so you can drop in a YouTube link that will play natively in the page, an audio link, etc. And if you pay for it to upgrade, you can do amazing things with it. And all it does, when you're finished, it gives you a web link, and you can paste it into Twitter. Someone clicks on it, and they're looking at something wonderful instead of a piece of shit Word document that 100 people have seen 1 billion times and are not paying any attention to at all.
So for you,
I honestly think that's what you got to do all the time.
If you were a short story writer, and you were just kind of like, I'm just a short story writer, I just want to do X amount, and it's just going to be a short story. It's not going to be something that I'm going to be able to publish, because it isn't going to be worth enough money for me to publish. I'm going to have a collection of 20 stories before I can publish it and make any money. From looking at what you sent me, I'm looking at that going, that's the platform you should be using. That is exactly the platform you should be using, because just get it out there. Just write it, make it look amazing, and put it out there. And just go, this is what I do.
Share it with your buddies. Yeah. And if you had a song, let's say I wrote a song this afternoon, and I recorded it on my phone, dropped it on YouTube, where I don't actually have to have it public. I could keep it private and still use that link. I can then, in my Spark page, do a little, hi, my name's Sean Smith. I'm in a band called Johnny Beatnik and the Deadbirds, even though there's only me. I wrote this afternoon. Here's some lyrics. Here's me in my bedroom performing it. Click here if you want to find out all the 100 other songs that are done in exactly the same way. And you've got something that's just different than banging it on, and that would take me from recording the song to doing the Spark thing an hour and a half. But I know people who spent the best part of a year doing an EP to have some fool like me go, yeah, that's pretty good, and then move on because Whitesnake re-released an album or whatever.
But again,
that's the nature of today.
Back in time, both of us were excited. I put a piece on my blog page. Both of us were really excited about this forthcoming release of Jim Morrison's writings and poems and everything. Is this amazing book that's coming out with unpublished works from Jim Morrison and all his collected works in one space, along with an audio of him reading some of that great work. But the way I look at that was that if Jim Morrison was here today, he would be he'd be going, I've written a poem. Okay, it looks a bit shit, doesn't it, on that blank piece of paper? And he'd go, put it, let's spark it up. And he'd just spark it up and he'd put it out there. And people would go, oh my God, and they'd read it and it'd be out there and it'd look amazing. And then he might have,
but the other thing,
but they would be using that kind of platform to make the mundane look amazing, because that's what you can do.
And what's great about it is when it looks amazing, you're more inclined to go, oh, my buddy Jeff will like this. I'll forward it on. I'm not going to forward you a Word document full of crap.
And that's the thing. That's where the technology is moving vastly onwards. Do you know, if you sent me,
it is.
If you just sent me a Word version with a poem on today, I'd look at it and I'd read it and I'd go, yeah, very good. And it could be amazing. You know, I'm not putting down anybody's workings. You know, everybody's judgment. You know, it's in the eye of the beholder or the ear of the listener. But I just look at it and go, okay, rock and roll or not. But if you sent it to me with the whistles and bells, and then a link to something else that does something else, which is maybe reading it or an audio of it, or here's a song, like you say, suddenly I'm engaging with it. And suddenly...
And I think what we're getting to here is with all our history of Kiss and Alice, and fast forward 20 years to White Zombie, fast forward to Henry, or same period, Henry Rollins. What each of them did was they created a totally immersive experience. Yeah, it just was. It became, especially something like Kiss for me. It just became everything, and you can see how that worked for Duran Duran, how that worked for punk bands, some jazz musicians. When it's totally immersive, you get more into it and you're invested in it. You're more likely to spend £40 on £40 on some vinyl than you are on a pair of jeans, or because you want to be part of it. And I think that's what a lot of the digital age has brought us up not to
and
think
the best
like that.
The best ones that are immersive, whether that is Rob Zombie or the most, I would imagine, the most relevant and famous person that you could put into that category right now in 2021 would be Dave Grohl. Because Dave sits there and you get the immersive experience with the Foo Fighters, but he sits there and he says, that first record, I played the drums, I played the bass, I played guitar, I sang on it. It was actually a demo, and I sent it out to people on a tape, and it just said Foo Fighters on it. He didn't even want people to know who it was because it was a cassette, because he didn't want to be judged from his Nirvana days. But he just said, have this, check it out. And he got into it by just doing it and doing it himself. But when he tells that story now, and he's in Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 people, what that does is there's some kid in the crowd who's sitting there going, well, I could probably do some drums. I might get away with the bass. I could definitely do guitar. I'm going to sing. Do you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a demo on my own, because that's what Dave did. And look at him now. He's 80,000 people, millionaire. That's what I want to do. And Rob Zombie does that, and Kiss did that, and Alice did that. All the great bands, the Doors did that. Certainly the Doors and Jim Morrison did that for sure. All the great bands that were immersive, and the punk bands, they made you believe that you could do it, even though it was a million miles away.
Yeah. And I think that let's take the X Factor and whatever the BBC one was called, where they got the writers to live in a house together. And The Voice, they don't make you believe I can do that too in the same way. It's seeking that TV way is
Yes.
seeking approval from
Yes.
your peers, if you like. Like Ollie Murs is like, he's a nice guy and everything, and he's a cracking artist. But I don't want to be told by Ollie Murs that I'm any good.
Well, I
Like,
don't
that
mind
counts
being
for
told
nothing.
by Ollie. I wouldn't mind being told by, by Tom Jones. I wouldn't mind being told by anybody. But what I don't like is the fact that system makes them feel that they can't achieve it without those people.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm getting at. Yeah,
That's
it's
bullshit.
become a thing.
That proper is bullshit. And that's what the immersive side of what we're talking doesn't make you do that. You know?
I mean, I've watched a lot of
Me
X
too.
Factors over the years for some reason, and the year that Lucy Spraggan backed out of the competition, you knew she was just going to be okay. She used it. She put herself in front of millions of people, and I can't remember why she left now, but you knew she was just going to go off and just do her own thing anyway. Winning
Absolutely.
it would have killed her. But that gave her just enough exposure to go, thanks very much. I'll go and run this way now. Very clever, very clever. And a good artist.
An absolute great artist. But I don't...
just to prove that we're not always talking about Led Zeppelin, Kiss, and things from the 70s.
The pair of us love Taylor Swift, the pair of us love all sorts. Music to us, whether it's Chuck D and Public Enemy or Miles Davis, to us, we're wide ranging. We don't talk about them as much because maybe they just aren't the first thing that comes into our head. But obviously, we're very appreciative of that because we've got a wide range. But going back to what you say, I thought this is, and the guy, and again, just reflecting back now, the guy who you're saying from before, who's sitting there with his phone and he's checking his phone and he's sitting there on the leather couch and he's eating his apple. He's making everybody in the room feel like, without me, you won't achieve where you want to go. You need me.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude. I don't really want to be here, but I am here and I've done this for 20 years and I've been successful and I've sold some records and I've snorted some coke with some rock stars and I've got drunk and all that. And without me, you won't make it. And that's the impression that they give. Still give that impression.
It is.
But the great one, I'll just hit on the great one. A great example would be Seymour Stein, who started Sire Records, signed the Ramones.
Yeah.
When you see Seymour, if you're lucky enough to see and meet Seymour, I've been privileged a couple of times to do this in Liverpool. Seymour is still like, give it me, I'll listen to it. If I love it, I will want you on my label. But you don't need me, because if I listen to it and I love it, everybody will love it. And that's why I want you on my label, because I believe that millions of people will love it. But you don't need me. But it'd be great if you did come on my label, because that'd be great for me, because, that'd buy me some more nice things. And he's very kind of in a completely different world, and when he tells his stories about signing Madonna and he tells all the stories about, Talking Heads and signing all the great acts, he just goes, I like them. I like them, but I also knew they were going to be huge artists. And I sat there thinking, God, it'd be really good if they were on my label and became huge artists. He said, but they would have done it whether they'd been on my label or any other label. And that's the attitude that you should buy into if you're going to talk to somebody.
I guess those people must exist. I mean, I know it probably sounds, if there's 100 record company people listening to this, they go, oh, they're really down on the record industry. Fuck this. But there's not. I know tons of people who are great. And I know a lot of PR people who are great too, even though I've given them a hard time as a collective. There are some great people out there doing things that they care about, but too many of them don't, and that's what you see. So
No, I
we've
don't
come
think
right off
that.
track
I
again, haven't
think
we?
what we're saying
Or
here
have
is
we?
question everything. Question everybody. No matter if
Yeah.
they've got a label that's got 2 artists and they've put out couple of EPs that have sold 100, or whether they've got like 100 artists and they've done 100 million records. Question everything. Just question that they're right for you.
I mean,
and don't just kind of go, oh my God, or yeah, I want to be on that. Make sure it's right, because more than ever, I mean, holy moly. I mean, if they say you only got one chance in the 80s or the 90s, what have you got now? Half a chance, quarter of a chance? I mean, you know, you're going to get another shot.
But but I'd like to touch on some of the bits that you know a lot more about than I within this discussion, which is things like, let's pretend we wrote a song together and you can get it into a game, or you can get it into Hollyoaks, and you think, if I was 20, I would have gone, nah, that's not looking like a rock star. But that's not real anymore. It's 2021, and you can't think like that. If you get a chance, if someone says, "Hey, I'd like to play I'd like your song to be part of Hollyoaks," that's a big audience, and that could be your break. So, how are there ways that, let's call them kids because everyone else does, are there ways that kids can pursue that?
To be honest with you, I think, for me, sync deals, SYNC, which is what they call sync deals, are amazing deals for artists, because if you can, more so now than ever, obviously because of the explosion in Amazon, Netflix, all the streaming platforms, more so than anywhere now, if you can get your song featured on the right series, it can, the difference is now they will put that out there into the world as part of their brand. They will share it, because when it comes to episode 15 and your song's in episode 15, they will share a clip from the series with your song on the channel saying, check out episode 15 this week with your song as a soundtrack. If that particular show is a medium hit, okay, fair enough. But if it's like, Stranger Things, or, whatever, the Umbrella Academy or whatever, wow, suddenly you will see your YouTube count go stratospheric, and you will see your Spotify account, and you will see everything. So it doesn't really matter. It's the end game. I mean, it's lovely to be cool, I'm sure, and like you said, I mean, if I got asked to be on the Umbrella Academy, or if I had to choose between the Umbrella Academy rather and Brookside or Hollyoaks, I'm going to choose the Umbrella Academy, because it's a comic book and it's Gerard Way and it's My Chemical Romance. But on the other hand, when you look at the audience and the millions of people that watch Hollyoaks and that check it out, and you look at their TikTok channel and you look at what they do, I'd kind of go, give me a song on that. Give me a song on that.
But maybe that also depends what kind of an artist you are.
Again, it's got to fit, hasn't it?
Yeah. And you have to think about those things.
We'll do that for you. There's great companies out there. There's one based. They're based in Liverpool. They've got offices, and I think in London and in Nashville. They're called Ditto, DITTO. If people want to check it out, and they're very good on sync. And they get stuff in Netflix. They get stuff, on Sky programs. They get stuff on. Funny enough, they get stuff on things like Channel 4 and Hollyoaks as well. But they will sit down with you and go through your tracks and kind of then come back to you and say, we think your track is right for X. And they will, because they've been doing it for long enough now, that they know what those people are receptive to. So there's a lot of help out there.
Yeah, and I guess the same with the gaming world.
Absolutely. Again, the companies that do sync, Centric is another one. SENTRIC, I think, Centric Music. They do a lot of that, and they will definitely get you on some. They'll get you on some huge games, and they'll get you on some ones that you just don't know whether they're going to be huge, and you take a punt, and that's the risk you take. But they're very good again
Sure,
at kind of talking to them, and if it's a Halo type game and they're looking for dark alternative pop, hip hop, rhyme or whatever, then they'll go to those artists and advise them that this game is coming out and that's the kind of soundtrack they want, and they will put them forward. But the great thing is they'll have a discussion with you, and they're not forceful. They're not like, again, I'm not saying they don't care. That's the don't care wrong wording, but they will come to you and say this opportunity has arisen. We think it'd be a perfect fit for you. If you don't, they go, okay, that's cool. We'll keep looking and we'll come back to you, and maybe we'll find something that you do feel is the perfect fit for you. So,
yeah, I mean, if you're going to throw, if we wrote a song and we're going to throw it on Spotify, only to be swallowed up by the Spotify machine overnight and spat out by the morning, you're actually better off statistically going, okay, let's not do that with that song, and let's make it available to any indie filmmaker who needs music for their soundtrack, which is also a thing. I can't remember the company's names, but I'm sure they're out there if you Google it. That is a much better use of your song than actually put it on Spotify, because
there's lots of people who do documentaries who are looking for increment music and just odd songs and things to fill the gap, background, or there's loads and loads of documentaries, and again it can pay you just as well or better than putting it on other platforms. I mean, I was having a discussion when the
but you also never know, do you?
Again, I'm not down on any platform, and if somebody wants to put their music on Bandcamp, cool. If somebody wants to put their music on Apple, iTunes, fab. If you want to put it on Spotify, fab. I mean, do what you want. I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong for doing it, because I don't think there's a wrong. However, I will add into that when you read that this week Spotify now gets 60,000 brand new tracks a day, I'm now sitting here kind of going, that's a lot of artists I'm not going to ever hear of.
This is why I think you should come out of the system if you're really serious.
Am I going to check out 60,000 tracks a day? A day? How am I going to do that? It's impossible. So who's going to hear? If the Dead Birds put out a track, I mean, it's 60,000 people it's competing with. If Dead Birds put a track on Spotify now, right this minute, I mean, what chance is that? The people who are going to are the same people who you're going to tell via your Twitter or your Facebook, or you're going to message. So you know what? You might as well just send it to the 20 people who are going to listen to it on Spotify. You might as well just send it to them for nothing, because they're the only people who are going to hear it.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, there's a whole other game, isn't there? Of as always, making a movie, making music, making anything is essentially a very small part of what you have to do if that's what you want to do for the rest of your life. As I said last week, if you just want to do it for kicks because you've got nothing better to do for the rest of the week, great. Rip the place up, drink a bottle of Jack, do whatever, smash your guitars.
The Anchoress, and she's going down the beach and just filming herself on the beach and doing little films, and there's films with a dog, and then she'll sit there filming herself, maybe tinkering on the piano or with an acoustic guitar, and then she'll put something together that's an actual video of a song, and she'll go, here's some lyrics, here's something I wrote earlier, I don't know, have a look or whatever. And she's not afraid to get content. to just have content, whether it's really relevant or whether it isn't relevant, to be honest with you. She just goes, here's something I did, and have a look, and tomorrow I'll be doing something else. So never mind, or great if you think it's wonderful, and through by doing it that way, people have her latest record, which is just about to drop, people like James G. Bradfield saw something she did, and he was like, oh, I'd love to collaborate with you, which is great for her because she gets the singer from the Manic Street Preachers on one of her songs, and again, there's an organic feel out there that you might as well just do what the hell you want to, and like you said, not be part of that game. And you sent me that the Bukowski link, which if anybody, that YouTube thing is great. if just don't do it, just don't do it. Just sit there, do what you're doing, and don't worry about it. And just don't get in a game you're not ready to play in. Really don't. Great.
Yeah. But if you are ready, be all in.
Yeah, absolutely. Be immersive and be 100 mile an hour and 100%. There's no middle ground anymore. The middle ground has completely disappeared because there's nobody in the middle ground. There's nobody writing.
Yes.
There's no radio or press or TV in the middle ground anymore because there ain't no tube on the TV. There ain't no melody maker. And radio is just bombarded with so much music that they can't keep up with it.
And therefore play everything they're expected to play. Well, because what else are you going to do?
Again, mate, I still think whatever you're going to send out, I was having a discussion today about, this event that we're planning to do in Sheffield that you kindly, did some of the press release today.
Yeah, talk a little
one
bit
of the
about
things
that as well,
I'm mindful of is it's great that we're going to be doing something on March the 13th in Sheffield as an in the stream event, and don't get me wrong, that's fantastic. With 4 or 5 bands, a band called Hague, which features the guy that was in Catfish and the Bottlemen or whatever, and it's going to be a great event. But I'm already sitting there and I'm already asking the question, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? What are we doing after this? Because you do realize once we've done this, we need to tell people what we're doing after this. We need somewhere else to go, because if we just do this and we do it on the 13th and then we put it online, what happens then? We just sit there.
Well, yeah, that's the equivalent of posting your book cover, right?
And they're kind of like, oh, we haven't thought. And I'm like, well, you've got to think that far ahead. You've got to think where, if you have sat there long enough on amber light, you best be ready when you've got a chance to go green light to have a whole bunch of stuff ready to go. Because if it does go somewhere, the worst thing you can do is find some success and not be able to capitalize on it. So it's not just as important about what you're doing now, it's what you're doing next. If what you're doing now becomes any kind of successful.
Yeah. Let me wrap up this hour with a crap story. I kind of my girlfriend used to watch a TV show called Castle, which is about a crime writer who goes for a day out with the police to see how they work and ends up staying there for about 9 series. And he's this massive multi-million best-selling writer. And as part of his weekly thing, he has a poker night. And somehow in the series, in this poker night, they'd pulled in Michael Connolly, who writes the Harry Bosch series, James Patterson, who puts out about 3 books a month, as far as I can tell, and some other guy, massive, Stephen King level blockbuster real writers. And he goes to this poker game one night with a guy who's just finished a crime novel, and he says, "Oh, these are all my friends." And I think it's James Patterson. He says, "Oh, so you suppose you think you're a bit of a big shot now you've written a crime novel?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, I think I'm pretty good." And he goes, "What are you going to do next?" Because I'll tell you what I did next. I wrote another book. Do you know what I did after that? I wrote another book. Do you know what I did next? I wrote another. And it goes on. And I thought, that's actually brilliant. Because anyone can write an album, but it's over as soon as it's out. What next?
That's what it has to be about. And if you don't know, then quite frankly, again, we'll go back to what before. Don't do it.
So there you go. All the world's problems solved in an hour or so, more or less. We never said we had all the answers, but I certainly think there's plenty of food for thought in there. Neither of us is hard to find if you want to pitch in with something. You'll find contact details for both of us in the show notes of whichever podcast platform you're using. If you like what we're doing here, don't forget to subscribe and tell a friend. Other than that, be cool to each other as always, and I'll see you next week.